Happy International Women's Day, everyone. My name is Melissa. Welcome to our next event celebrating No More Week and the 10th anniversary of No More. Today, we will be discussing a journey of healing using artistic expression to survive domestic violence and sexual abuse. Our intention today is to have a relaxed dialogue, to explore and understand the benefits of artistic expression for survivors of domestic and sexual violence. This event was inspired by the most beautiful watercolor created by Janet Heaton, which you have seen on all of our promotional materials for our event. This image, which to me reflects the layers of our journey, inspired us to explore the themes of artistic expression as a way to heal. Artistic expression is a well-documented way for survivors of trauma to share their experience, as well as be part of their healing journey, and can be an effective tool for expression, personal growth, and recovery from trauma. Artistic expression often has the capability to reach deeper into the emotional and personal effects of trauma when you've experienced domestic and sexual violence and all types of trauma. Different creative outlets, from music to textile making, to dance, to story, to poetry, often promotes healing for survivors. This creative process and the resulting artistic expression provide a way for survivors to explore their feelings, reconcile emotional conflicts, and facilitate a greater understanding of their experiences to the world around them. Before we get started, I would like to review a few roadmaps for us to consider during this time together. We welcome questions and constructive comments. Please use the Q&A function to share your thoughts. Our discussion may be hard for some of us to hear, which is really okay. That's part of the growth journey. At No More, we have a global directory that lists services and support in over 200 countries. We will share the link during our time together. Please reach out to the services in your area. This is your event. The audience, the panelists, the wonderful artwork we've received already. And all of this is grounded in respect and trust. And we encourage you to help shape this with your thoughts as well. We are honored to have panelists who are artists in many different mediums. A lot of it is in their spirit that they share with us today. They will share their perspectives and enhance our discussion today. I'd like to begin by introducing our panelists. G. Dehano is co-founder of You Blossoms, We Blossom, a company in the well-being and personal growth space for inspiring entrepreneurs and companies. She is a poetess, and she has written a book about domestic violence and mental health. The title is The Forgiven, Forgotten Soul. Welcome, G, and we're looking forward to your contributions. Our next panelist is Common Salmon, who many of you know as one of Britain's most renowned actors and is a dedicated philanthropist. He's a storyteller. He embraces life and shares it with everyone. And he makes us all the better for what he brings to us. He made his feature debut in Prime Suspect and has had recurring roles in James Bond films, as well as the Resident Evil film series. Colin is patron of the African Caribbean Leukemia Trust, the Richard House Children's Hospice, and an ambassador for the Princess Trust. We are so excited to hear from you today and to hear the stories that can enhance our lives and how this expression has enhanced your life as well. Our next panelist is Daniela Steinfeld. She's a New York-based award-winning actress and filmmaker, activist, and serial entrepreneur, born and raised in Serbia. Daniela is the director and producer of Hold Me Right, a feature documentary about the aftermath and healing for victims and perpetrators of sexual violence, which also tells a story of her own. It is one of the most powerful witnesses to the journey of the survivor, and we welcome you all to see it and share the experience. Paolo Boyer is one of Billboard charting songwriter production team Heat Seekers. Paolo has written and produced for some of the biggest artists in the world. He is an amazing songwriter, bringing themes to each of us as we continue to seek words and music to calm our soul and enliven us. We are thrilled to have Paolo join us, and I should have said we're also thrilled to have Daniela. Finally, we have Tally Tripp, who is a licensed clinical social worker and registered board-certified art therapist who brings over 40 years of clinical experience to her work, specializing and integrating somatic, expressive, and experiential approaches for the treatment of trauma. As director of training for Common Threads Project, Tally has facilitated Common Thread trainings to groups in Nepal, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, New York, and Seattle. You see some of those pieces of artwork next to her. A mixed media artist herself, Tally values the range of creative arts therapies that provides a unique means for exploring and working through traumatic experiences. And lastly, I should introduce myself, Melissa. I think I already told you that, but my team thought it would be a good idea if I shared with you today the reason why you're seeing this slide. To me, artistic expression is a journey, and what you're seeing is a piece of my embroidery. This is based on a moth turning into a butterfly. It's not complete, and neither is my journey. The embroidery has layers and layers of stitching. The silver work is built piece by piece by piece. It starts with pools of blood and goes up to the silver moon. Like recovery, we have layers and layers to explore, feel, and stitch our wounds together to create. For each survivor, the journey is different, and we go at our own pace. So today I want to kick us off with really this wonderful discussion and dialogue. I'm so pleased you put your glasses on, Colin. I can't see a blasted thing without mine. So I'd like to start as we all share together today. Really, how has artistic expression manifested in your life? Daniela, can I start with you, please?
Yes. Hi, everybody. I am so honored to be here today, and so honored that we can share the power of the art and how it can heal us and recover us and find a meaning in the whole chaos of sexual trauma. So what is that you wanted, Melissa, to discuss? I can share about my my film and how the film came about.
Sure, that would be fantastic. It's about how this artistic expression manifests itself. For me, it's embroidery. What is it for you?
To me, art actually played a key role. I would rather actually say that that I took a path to make film, and that actually saved my life. I was in a very very difficult situation. I survived sexual assault by a powerful politician in Serbia at the height of my career. I was an actress in Serbia. I had a beautiful career. I understood that I have to flee if I want to avoid kind of continuous violence or retaliation. And I left Serbia without saying goodbye to anybody, without mentioning, not even to my parents, what has happened to me, and tried to find a new life in the United States. And I thought, well, nobody knows me here, and so I don't have to think about it or talk about it ever again. It's gone. Everything is just, I can just relax and have a new life. Like the horror is gone, the fear is gone, the pain is gone. And of course, as we know, trauma doesn't work that way. I started to develop symptoms of PTSD that just, at the time, of course, I did not know that I have symptoms of PTSD, and that started to deepen and heighten, and the symptoms started to have all sorts of manifestations that eventually I just couldn't function as a human being. I was suicidal. And I was very lucky that at the kind of in a basically, when I hit bottom line, kind of when I hit the bottom, I got help from a friend who basically told me, just stay with us, no matter kind of as long as you want, and we will unconditionally love you and support you, no matter what you're going through, no matter how kind of dark or ragey or your days are, or your mood is. You are safe here. And that was the beginning of my healing. And it was so inspiring that I understood that, like, wait a second, if all does it take to get this horror and trauma and disability really off of my life is caring, support, and listening a person next to me, then I have to get this message out. Like, and it was that message was so strong. Like, if my friends were able to save me with their care and kindness, then I have to create a ripple effect. So I decided to create a feature documentary about healing after trauma, specifically focusing on the aftermath and our intimate journeys, not focusing on crimes themselves, not focusing on forensics and stats. I think that kind of takes away from seeing what are we going through as survivors. And then I understood that, well, what I'm basically addressing is culture and how stigma and silence condition that it's one thing is to survive the sexual violence. The other thing is to survive blaming and shaming and stigma. So when I think about, well, if I'm exploring the culture, I have to speak with the perpetrators as well. I have to find out why, what is it in the culture that enables them to do this, and what the biggest curiosity I had was just like, what keeps them safe of doing so? Like, what kind of these premeditated actions, which are very, very common when it comes to sexual violence, like what is the process of kind of a mentally stable person, which is unfortunately just the fact is the most of our perpetrators are kind of they don't have a diagnosis of difficult mental disability, so they do reason, and they do reason that this is okay, and more so that we will keep quiet. So I went on a journey of understanding them, and all of this time I was silent. I was too afraid to speak up and to share my story in a film. And it's very, very interestingly, when I was interviewing perpetrators, preparing for those interviews, I, as an actor and storyteller, I understood that like I cannot impose judgment and prejudice coming to the conversation, because it will be then we will kind of not have an essence of these people, and my mission won't be accomplished. So I went on a spiritual journey of having no judgments towards child rapists, abusers, people in prison, out of prison, people kind of, and folks that told me into my face and on camera, accounts that I just couldn't understand that I even am hearing and recording, and that practice of non-judgment to perpetrators actually started to heal me. That was a very big step of me trying to understand the human aspect of this whole conundrum of epidemic of sexual violence. Yeah, the film is called Hold Me Right, and in a far end of making of the film, when we had the rough cut, I just took courage, supported by my friends filmmakers, to share my story in a film, and I could not thank them enough for me kind of giving myself a space and speaking up. I'm being, because I went public with my story, I'm being retaliated right now in Serbia by the perpetrator, by the government. But what I just still, to be really honest with you, stand here kind of in peace and in happiness, because helping getting my story out, and therefore creating a ripple effect to encourage survivors that they're not alone, that it's okay, to encourage allies to understand that like their support can heal us completely. I think that feeds me with so much strength and peace, that it doesn't matter what the government what they want, that they want me in prison or retaliated. It's a small thing towards this power.
Well, Daniela, it is so interesting to hear how this artistic journey has manifested in your life, and how really this whole journey and this concept of forgiveness and this concept of PTSD and mental health, which many of us have gone through. I remember thinking I was absolutely loony and was terrified that the earth was falling out from underneath me. And I happened to know of a Vietnam vet in the little city I was living in. And I knocked on his door and was like, what's happening to me? I don't know. I don't know what's happening. And so for many of us, it is that mental health piece that suddenly starts to shift our foundations when we feel safe. And the way you've articulated this journey really helps all of us understand what this is like. I'd like to move to G, because we've heard about this whole concept of mental health, and you've written this marvelous book. And I'd like you to share a bit about how has artistic expression manifested itself in your life?
Yeah, so I was actually writing poetry since I was 11. It more so started when I didn't quite like maths. So I had this tool, I had this expressive outlet already with me. But little did I know how it would support me in my later years of life. So I experienced domestic violence for 5 years in a long-term relationship. Like Daniela, I didn't tell anyone, so my family didn't know. I was experiencing this remotely in isolation by myself. I also I was living in the Caribbean at the time as well, so I had the reach for family wasn't quite close because I'm originally from London. And then, as an incident happens, so I would say the incident that happened, which my life flashed before me, so I had to beg for my life. So I knew then that that it was over as such. I knew then that it was over. So then I came back to the UK, and then I found out a couple of weeks later I was expecting. So it's probably one of the best gifts I had. So I had a conversation with myself. Can you be a single parent? Yes, you can. You can do this. So I raised a beautiful daughter who is going to be 9 this year. So being creative has always been there. But interestingly enough, when I was going through the experience of 5 years, it became less and less there for me. So as I was losing myself, I was reaching less to the tools that I would have used to support me. You know, and I can really resonate with what Daniela said. You know, you become this person that you almost kind of like don't recognize anymore. You know you're a strong person, you know you're more than capable, and when you look at yourself in the mirror, you start not seeing you anymore. So it was so I came back to the UK, and so I separated, and it was 5 years later that I revisited, that I started to write poetry again. So I was writing songs. I had a studio in the Caribbean, a music studio, but I wasn't really giving myself the opportunity to connect with what was really going on with me. And I was very much putting on the brave face, you know, running a business, and just cracking on. But it was when I remember I was on Amazon. Poetry talks to me, so that was always my creative outlet. So I remember typing on Amazon, domestic violence poetry book, you know, mental abuse poetry book. I couldn't find anything, and I thought, why can't I find anything? So I chose, and I thought, come on, G, this is your way of giving back of what you've experienced and bringing light to what you experienced. And I sincerely appreciate everyone's experience with domestic violence, sexual violence, mental abuse is different. So I didn't want this just to be a book about me. So I have done, my experiences are in the book, but so are the experiences that I've heard from other people, the experiences that I've put myself into, knowing what has been other people's experience. It's an inclusive book. You know, it's not just about, it's about relationships, whether they're heterosexual, whether they're, you know, same-sex relationships. I wanted it to be inclusive and diverse as possible, so it talks to people. And the main purpose for the poetry was to give hope. And I wanted it to be more so that it connects with you, and that's why there's a variety of takes on the poetry, different types, short, long. And I just wanted people to know, when that gut feeling talks to you and something resonates with you in the book, it's happening for a reason. And I think a lot of us don't really connect with our gut as much as we should. If I had connected with my gut much earlier, maybe I wouldn't have been in such a life-threatening situation. So yeah.
Gee, this is fascinating to hear this. And as you're talking about that gut reaction,
Mm-hmm.
and how we hide from it. And sometimes the art, we hide and we hide and we hide. And we bury it deep so that we can't share what we love most
Mm-hmm.
with people who harm us, even though we may love them too.
Yeah.
I don't know for you. For me, when I pick up a needle, I always take a breath like, this is my healing. I don't know if that happens for your poetry.
Oh, absolutely. So I want to go back a bit further. So the way poetry means to me, it's an expressive art. So one thing I want to share with the audience today is there's no wrong or right. So when I was creating my art of poetry, it is right. It's beautiful in its own right. And it didn't follow any flow. It didn't follow any rules, because to me, art is meant to be as expressive as you want. You know, I love going to galleries. So and sometimes things don't make sense to you, but it's art. It's what's the representation of that person's feeling and emotion. So I think So yeah, I just think when someone is expressing themselves, I encourage people to express themselves before you can even call it poetry. You know, you just need to express yourself. And I absolutely, Melissa, I have like notepad and pen next to me near the bed. I have my notes phone where I write my notes and new thoughts and processes. And I've got my beautiful daughter who writes her name on everything. So this owned by Ivor. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I was like, another notepad gone to my daughter. But I have to say one thing she wrote this year, which I couldn't say anything. She wrote Mummy and Ivor's goals 2023 on my most recent notepad. And I thought, okay, that's fine.
This is good. This is good. And it's bringing healing to the whole family.
Yeah.
So Paolo, let's have a chat. We're hearing about words and message and healing and song. How has this artistic expression manifested in your life?
So I originally was just more of a songwriter. And I noticed from a really young age, like talking 4 or 5 years old, I noticed how music would move me, or would elicit a feeling in me. And I was obsessed with trying to cause that in someone else. And oftentimes, 4 or 5, too young for this, but into my teenage years, it was something selfish, like trying to get a girl to fall in love with me, or something like that. I'm a romantic at heart. Or it was taking other people's trauma or pain and trying to get a feeling out of them, trying to motivate them, or to try and make them see the light at the end of the tunnel. I think the best example of that is actually my sister, who I don't think is on the call right now. One of the best songs I ever wrote, and is probably her favorite if she was ever be asked, was actually about a situation she was going through, some heartbreak issues that she was going through. And she naturally gravitated to it. I've never told her it was about her, like specifically, and she'll understand now from all the details of the lyrics and stuff. But yeah, so that's really kind of how it manifested with me, just through music, melody. And we all kind of have different favorite songs, different parts of songs that we all gravitate to. So I really try when I'm making music to find those moments for other people to enjoy. So it's not always just about me, it's about trying to motivate and elicit emotion from other people.
It's interesting as a facilitator, and I think sometimes words can be very limiting, and a facilitator might be a little too narrow. But as you're speaking, I'm thinking about when I sing, as completely tone deaf as I am, there's this vibration in me, and I feel like maybe, do you feel that? And do you feel that vibration to other people?
Definitely. And I had a listening party for the project I just put out, and I talked about this one song in particular where I had a friend of mine who's a great vocalist. She joined me on the song, and it was the last song I was recording for the project. It wasn't about me. It was actually about like men's mental health and helping friends out. But she sang her parts, and I had to turn the project in that day, and I felt like I needed to add more. And there's a part of the song at the end where I sang in a voice I hadn't felt before, and you can almost hear it in the recording. I actually had to turn it down because it was too overpowering, but I don't normally sing like that. And it just, the emotions of knowing that this project was done, and it was kind of my crutch for a situation I had gone through. It was quite eye-opening that like that could be brought out of me, and I wasn't even trying. So I definitely resonate with what you just said about, the vibrations and the feelings that can be elicited from you.
And your songs themselves, it's so interesting that where do you get your inspiration, and where you have gotten your inspiration from a very difficult time? Maybe.
Yeah, oftentimes, growing up, I had acne. I was not the best of looking kid, quite dorky. And I used music to kind of escape from that, and almost like that was the person I wanted to be. I was the cool guy, and I had that kind of swag in the songs I wrote. And as I've gotten older, I've realized now I draw inspiration from. It's almost like when I'm really happy, I can't write music. I'm not as prolific with it. I need some kind of pain, and oftentimes I'll have to take myself into a place. I'll be in a dark room by myself, or maybe have a candle on, and I'll get myself mentally into someone else's story or someone else's pain, kind of how I mentioned with my sister, and it could be completely made up. But that's because I know the end product. I want to be able to help somebody with it, so I have to kind of visit that dark place to get the music and the melodies out. So
Isn't that
that's
interesting?
the inspiration there.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and interesting on the sort of methodology behind as well. And so now I'd like to turn to Colin, who at heart, you're such a communicator and a storyteller. And I feel like we're building this wonderful kaleidoscope for our audience. And I guess to you, the same question. How has artistic expression manifested in your life?
Artistic expression is my life. It literally is. I worked out very young that every word that was uttered, every song that I sung, everything that I did could have an impact. So therefore that is art at its best. But listening to everybody's conversation today, there's certain things that really come to the fore, and things I've learned for myself as a man and a father and husband. I hear this thing, don't upset him. I hear this thing of artists never look away. We look at everything. We're not fearful. We have to be able to look at every single thing. And then I hear the word hold, and then I hear the word breathe, and then I hear Paolo say to go into a role. Really, he's talking about, that to me is almost acting. That's literally what we do. I do for a living. And it's, again, going back to the beginning there earlier when a friend talked about not judging, because my job is not to judge. My job is to work out, how did we get here? How did this character end up where he ended up? I never chose to be an actor, but I would be forever grateful that I was given this chance to be an actor, because it really did help me overcome my traumas from my own childhood and adult life, early adult life. Because again, I had to really look at these characters, and there is not a character I wouldn't play. And I hear other actors say I would never play a child molester or this or that, and I just don't think that's my choice. I don't think it's if it's well written, of course, it's not my role to say I will never play. I will never. That's like saying I will never be that. It's almost spiritually impossible to say that. I think one of the things that really matters to me in my expression was that I could say what I wanted. And one of the reasons I survived, I think, my traumas was I was prepared to upset him. I was prepared to fight back in different ways. Obviously, I had to become very poetic. I was just a child in a world that was just quite intense. So I was always rebellious and fought back in ways that, whether it be being naughty, often being naughty, but I refused to accept it. I refused to accept it. It was my fault. My mother, was young when she had me, but one of the best things about my mum was she would say, it's not you, it's you, it's not you. You're not the problem. They have the problem with you. It's not your problem. It manifests in your life as a challenge and a problem, but they have the problem. But I keep coming back to them. Don't upset them, I think, is the thing. It's like the powerful men in Serbia. What's upset them is that you are prepared to tell the story, because they don't believe that they ever have to answer to anything. And that's what we have to do as artists, is upset people. But it doesn't mean you argue or shout. It just means you tell your story honestly and openly. And you have nothing to hide. Those who have things to hide panic. But I'm afraid we have to upset them. I see, whether it be, I've likened it to the guys who went running to protect the Winston Churchill statue, and they're looking back. If I look back at their forefathers, they were often those guys who died in the First World War in the trenches, of which you sort of go, is this being, who are you not? What are you doing? Why are you trying to protect him? Because he epitomizes to me those who, in some ways, are responsible for our traumas. And the word itself, trauma, dreams, drama, they're all connected. It's all part of the mighty handful, if you like. And I did start in drama therapy. That's where as a worker, not as a drama therapist, but I would be one of the actors who would go in to create, again, this word comes up, a safe space for people to be able to express themselves. Because these young people in the psychiatric hospitals, children's homes, prisons, mentally handicapped schools, didn't respond to authoritarianism. So they do not respond to laws. But before laws, there were only stories. So we had to manifest it that way. And I'll end on this. One of the most powerful words in my life at the moment is symbiosis. And going back to its original, she who discovered it coined this term. It's not the singer of the song, it's the song they're singing. And I think we live in a world where it's actually is the singer of the song. And it's like, we have to stop this. We have to start listening to what's being said. And you'll be surprised at who your tribe is, because it transcends race, gender. We are here,
Yes.
and we care deeply. And we just got to keep singing and expressing ourselves. And we will find each other like we have today. And I hope my life is art, really. That's it.
Life is art. It's wonderful that you've brought to us the word symbiosis, and much more than just the word. It is the act of listening. And sometimes there is no word. We can listen to a look.
Oh, yes.
We can listen to the deafening silence and all that is going on. To a brush stroke on a painting. All the different ways. I imagine to have had the opportunity to work in prisons and in mental health facilities, you have a unique perspective of different ways in which.
And seen some of the best, some of the greatest actors I will ever see, because it was all or nothing.
Mm.
And that, it's your life. And that's the point. It's your life. You know, they're not turning back saying, oh, I'm just pretending. I mean, when you go, you have to go. And I think everybody here talking about their stories, you know, humbles me and I mean humbles me in the term of, I know I am just dust and I will become dust again. I really understand that. And we stand when we tell our stories. We express ourselves with power and our truth. And I'll leave you with this. I wrote this because I was the big male who got lost. And I've discovered I'm ADHD, so now I understand many things, but it goes like this. Some say mistakes were made, but when I look back, I was afraid too much. I lusted for that life too much. In the smash and grab, I lost my touch. I have to agree. It got so wild I couldn't see. No balance what I find there. Pulses race, a loss of grace. All those I loved just had to chase. And then I learned that freedom doesn't mean power. You force those weaker to their knees. But when I hold you in the darkness, I begin to understand. And when I hold you in the sadness, you just take my hand. So I must hold you.
Colin, thank you. All of us are touched by this. And we are grateful that you are holding us so much. Tally, you are an art therapist, a trauma therapist. You yourself are an artist. Can you reflect on what you've heard today and what you'd like to share with us?
Thank you, Melissa. I've just found listening to the stories that I've heard today so touching. And this idea of creating a safe space, a holding space, where we can really listen to the stories and make room for whatever format that takes. Working with trauma for 40 years, when I started out in those psychiatric hospital spaces and places where traditional verbal therapy was the norm. And I came in with my drawing pads and my pastels and my paints. And what would happen was that the psychiatrist who was trying to get the patient to tell their story verbally was not having a lot of success because the patient wanted or was only able really to share their stories without relying on words, that the words were not there, that we even understand that the neurobiology shuts that part of the brain down. I think one of you talked about feeling hopeless and stuck in that trauma space, shut down. That's a real response. And so working as a creative arts therapist, we use the experience. We open the room up to play or drama or music or movement or visual art to express what is so difficult to say, to express what we don't have language for. And in my role as an art therapist, as a creative arts therapist, I'm a witness to that. And I think that's so important. And as many of you said, creating a documentary or a play or a piece of writing or music, this is something we can see and hear, right? Or painting. And so being witnessed really is another aspect of that healing process. And that's why in my work in Common Threads, for example, we work with groups of women, and these are survivors of gender-based violence and war and unspeakable traumas. But what we encourage them to do through creative modalities, including drama, music, art, etc., we encourage them to find a way to tell their stories. And in our groups, we actually use textiles, and they tell their stories in an explicit little story cloth. And so the women are together stitching slowly. That regulates the breath, that regulates the attunement to one another. That whole group process is absolutely beautiful. And just recently having been in Nepal, for example, and sitting with women sewing, and all of a sudden spontaneously music started to come up. People were humming and rocking, and then suddenly there's laughter. And amidst talking about or investing in a narrative that is just so painful and difficult, but the power of the group, the power of the art, the power of that whole creative process is something that is just remarkable. So I really just commend, each person that has spoken about their journey, and anyone listening to think about really tuning into and believing in that creative part of self. And sometimes it's just a matter of making space to find that, to trust that process, to not be so afraid of it. But it actually, healing trauma, we can heal trauma, right? We can't take it away, but we can change the way that is felt and experienced. The power of making a film about it. You go from victim to, a powerful one, right? Who has that voice. That's a real shift. And I think that's what we're looking for in terms of any kind of situation where we want to move from feeling shut down and disempowered to being able to have agency and connect with the world and share our vision and our experience with others.
Tally, you talk about sharing the experience, but taking it back a step, of that moment of not being afraid to start the process. So it's before we breathe. How would you encourage us to take that first breath? If we are artists, well, we're all artists, all human beings are, all plants are, all of life is.
Mm.
And to that end, you know, gardening can be art. It's just
Oh, yeah.
around us.
Mhm.
So maybe someone is watching this and they're saying,
Mm.
but how do I take that first step?
Mm.
What do I
Mm.
do? I'm so
Mm.
trapped. I'm so
Yeah,
trapped.
yeah.
What would
Yeah.
you say to encourage them?
Well, you know, I certainly think having a partner that you feel safe with is a great way to start, because it can be really intimidating to make those first steps alone, to make a mark on a page, or even to pick up a needle and thread, or to attempt to write some verse. And so, you know, I think ideally, if there's someone that is trustworthy. It could be a therapist, it could be a friend, it could be a pastor, or a person in the community. But I think feeling safe, it's not an easy thing to do. When I work with artists, I have them use their non-dominant hand to start a painting, rather than trying to focus on getting it right, doing it the right way. And so I think just really taking it slow, making those first marks on the page, and being curious and open. And all I can say is, as a therapist, that's my whole goal, is to facilitate those first steps. And they are, as you said, Melissa, really, really difficult. And we can feel like, I don't see it. And so that's why I think if you have someone who says, yeah, but look what you did, you just, dug a hole in the ground. Can you smell that earth? I mean, that's right. So using all of our senses, really connecting with what we touch, what we smell, what we taste, what we see, what we hear, and opening up to that in whatever way is possible.
Thank you,
Mhm.
Natalia. I really, really, really appreciate that. I'd like for each of us who are panelists to think about, what would you say to someone who is on this, who not only might be thinking about expressing some of this for the first time, but also how they express it. What would you say to them? And I'm going to start with Daniela. You had your hand raised. I'm conscious of time, and I don't want to cut anyone off at all, because this is critical that we share and we hear. But Daniela, what would you share with someone who might be listening?
I would share, if you are afraid to start, and you, with your intuition, feel that art is a journey to your healing, to do what I did, which is kind of pretend that it didn't happen to me, but that I'm just recording other people. So kind of, and perhaps, like, maybe you're writing a poetry that is about somebody imaginary, and you can maybe, if you're too afraid of disclosing or dealing with your trauma, try to find a different type of expression or an angle that feels safe for you. It can be, you can write some kind of imaginary fiction that is kind of inspired by your events. And I believe what can happen once you start putting that energy out there, in no matter what form, just as long as it makes you feel safe, I strongly believe that will be healing, and that your next step in a journey will be to be more and more authentic to your inner world, your inner trauma, inner pain, or inner strength. And I've whoever is going through an aftermath of sexual domestic violence, I would strongly recommend them to find any outlet. It's the result is doesn't really matter. What really matters is for you to take on a journey, and start your healing.
Thank you, Daniela. Paolo, what would you say to someone who is sitting and listening, and sharing today with us?
And I'm saying this as someone who's only really conquered this maybe 6 months ago. It's really just to get out of your own head and not judge yourself and not overthink what you're trying to express. I think Sting said it best when he talked about, he was talking about musicians, but really applies to all artists, right? You have the creative voice in your head that's doing the creating, telling yourself this is great. And then you have the critic that's saying, no, it's not. No one wants to hear this, no one wants to see that. And oftentimes that drowns out the creative voice. So really it's just conquering that. And you know, my philosophy was, I used to write songs for record labels and stuff like that. I got kind of fed up that none of them ever came out because of the politics of the business, but I just kind of, my ambition was for millions of people to hear my music, but now it's just, I just want one person to hear it, and that's it. And that person could be me. No one else needs to hear it. And I think that's the biggest lesson for any kind of artistic expression that you need to make to help yourself recover from trauma is no one needs to see or hear it. It's just for you. And that's the best way of getting things going.
I'm thinking about this and thinking Dory from Finding Nemo, keep swimming, just keep going, no matter what. It's not up here, it's in here. G, what would you share?
I would say if you have the fear of starting to understand which expressive outlet medium you want to communicate with, is really to start focusing on yourself and giving yourself that time to be at peace with yourself. So for example, if being in nature, before you even start picking up a brush or start storyboarding or something, just be with yourself first and collect those thoughts with yourself on how you're feeling. Sometimes that's so powerful, just understanding where you are at with your journey, as opposed to then feeling ready to start expressing yourself. It's something I personally did myself. I took that 5-year period before I was even ready to produce a poetry book. So nature is for me. If I want to sit in nature and just listen to the birds sing and just be around greenery, it could be meditation. It's just working towards you first and prioritizing yourself. And I think the second stage is the expressive stage. So that's, I would say, never underestimate the power of understanding yourself first.
Thank you, G. Colin, I'd like to pose a question to you that has come from our audience. Do you find that the process of creating is as important as the final product?
I think the process of creating is more important, to be honest, because I've often moved on. Once it's done, that bit's done, I sort of already gone. So I sort of don't really watch myself in my jobs and things. I just move on, and people often ask me, what's your favorite job? And I sort of have to be honest and say it's the one I'm doing right now, because this is where it's at. And I try to say to people, where you is where it's at. Just if you can believe that, that's what I've had to do with myself. And just on the note of something you said earlier, if you make every song you write or everything you make like a prayer, it's a personal prayer, nobody can judge your prayer. It's yours. So it's not a product, it's deeper than that. So I think
yes.
I think the process, I'm always an absolute beginner, and that I love. I'm very happy to be, now I've learned it's okay to be a beginner, because then you say I don't know, and one of the hardest things in life is to say I don't know. But that's what I love about children. They look at you and go, I don't know. How does this work? And actually, I often now say to children, I don't know. Should we go and find out? Should we be curious? And I think back to some of the sad times where I was sobbing in my room and the breathing, and it became about controlling my breathing and bringing myself back. And then I sort of realized when I play my trumpet, or I sing in a choir, or I'm listening to myself in headphones when I'm in the studio, I hear that breathing and I think, oh my goodness, this is something I do. This is what we do. We breathe back into it. So those three little things. The present is the issue, creating and experimenting and making them the ritual of making your prayer, and don't forget to breathe.
I am overwhelmed and humbled by everyone's sharing today. And it has made such a difference in my life. And to those of us who have joined us today, I hope it has opened a space for each of you. We have been very fortunate at No More. We did a little call out and asked for artists to share their work. And so I'm going to ask if our fabulous tech team could share that video now with us, so we can watch that.
My hair makes a statement I can't deny. My hair makes a statement I can't even hide. My hair makes a statement that speaks with pride when someone comes up and asks me why. Well, really it starts with hello, how are you? I like the pink at the end. It's brave of you. And I kind of pause and remember a time when there was no color at all in my life. Yes, things were bleak. I had lost my voice, all because someone had taken my choice. Who am I now? What does this mean? I surmised I couldn't be me again. But slowly I felt support from my crowd as they pulled me up every time I was down. But during that time I needed something stark, something to remind me there wasn't a mark. No, there wasn't a sign, a tattoo, or a brand. There was no way I belonged to that man. Yes, this gave me strength when I felt I had none, and gave me the courage to stand on my own. Yes, I have a voice I will not fear, even when you look at me and sneer. And although at times deceit gets the upper hand, I still know I win in the end. My hair makes a statement I can't deny. My hair makes a statement that I will never hide. I may not be loud, I may not be brazen, I simply know my strength cannot be taken. Now you know the story behind the dye and how I was able to regain my smile. So should something happen, know I will support you as you let light back in. And should you need someone to stand in the gap when you tell your story and someone knocks you back, I'll be the voice that comes from behind you saying, no, it's not taboo to finally stand up and say, me too.
We have had the most remarkable submissions. And for us, and our symbol is continual, and it is inclusive. People who are listening, people who want to share this, people who are our panelists, please come and share your work with us. It is something that we want to grow and share with people and curate something. And we don't know what yet, because it's our journey. But the survivor voice is grounded in everything we do and every message we create, and that hope. And the art is hope in whatever manifestation that comes to us. We have had the most enjoyable discussion today and the most interesting discussion and dialogue around art and expression, our thoughts, how we're learning every day, and the breath of our life really feeds into everything that we do. I want to thank everyone, to Colin and Daniela, Paolo, Tally, and G. what you shared today has changed people's lives, has given many people permission to express what is inside that might be a little bit too difficult. And this healing that you speak of will happen for all of us, and it is a journey. I want to thank you again for the time we have together. I'm just checking to see if there's anything else. Here's a comment. This webinar is amazing. Thank you to all the panelists for sharing their experiences and wisdom. So I think we'll end on that note. Thank you very much. We have another video to show, which really is about common threads. And then we'll end our time together. Before we do, please do submit your artwork to us at info@nomore.org. We are here. It means a lot to us. It won't be in a void. We will use this to share with other people. Any final words anyone wants to add before we end?
I would just like to invite all of the folks in New York. Tomorrow we are throwing Dance in Defiance of Sexual Violence dance party, where we are encouraging survivors to reclaim their body. So if anybody from New York would like to participate, maybe you can contact Info No More, and we will send you a free codes for the tickets. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you everyone very much for sharing your day and your time, your journey, your passion. It has made all of our lives and time together so meaningful. Thank you.
At Common Threads Project, we accompany women and girls on their healing journey from sexual violence, war, and displacement. We have developed a unique methodology for this process. In our programs in Ecuador, Nepal, Bosnia, and Eastern Congo, we have witnessed a miraculous capacity for resilience and growth. Even in the most challenging contexts, recovery is possible. Our work is inspired by the ancient tradition of making story cloths that is found in so many different cultures. We know that our deepest human experiences seem to defy words. So in many contexts throughout history, women have come together to sew their unspeakable stories as a way of being understood. We combine this practice with current trauma therapies to achieve profound and lasting recovery. We work in collaboration with local community organizations. Common Threads Project trains local practitioners who adapt the program so that it is culturally resonant. They lead the healing circles, and we mentor them as they gain expertise. In a Common Threads circle, there is a sense of intimate connection with others. Within the safety of the group, we work where trauma lives, in the body and in visual images. The stitching itself is calming, rhythmic, and meditative. Like trauma work, the story cloth happens at a slow pace. It takes time and patience.